Okay.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right. Good morning, everybody. This is Judy, and we are here for the Resource Conservation 101 webinar. We're just getting started, so hopefully everybody can hear me. We're going to wait for a few more people to join the webinar with us, and then we'll go ahead and get started in probably 2 or 3 minutes. If anybody's having any issues, just so you know, we have everybody muted at this time. You should be looking at a panel that is the GoToWebinar functions, just to kind of familiarize you with some of the capabilities of the webinar. If you have joined using your computer audio, you should be fine. We have you muted, and the attendees that I show right now are muted and logged in fine. But hopefully you can hear and see everything that's going on at the same time. So it's you'll be getting both pieces, both the visual and the audio, through this webinar system. If you happen to be having any issues right now and you want us to try and address them before we get started, there is a little question button down at the bottom of your panel. You can go ahead and hit the little plus sign, and it will open up a box where you can type in a question. You can actually do that at any time throughout the webinar, so if you do have any issues or if anything comes up or if you have questions throughout the webinar, you would use that panel. You also have the other option if you look in the attendee section, and if you're on the attendee tab, you can see, once you open that up with the little plus, you should be able to see your name in there. And if you have a question and you want to raise your hand, you can go ahead and under the little hand icon, you can click inside that box next to your name and it'll let me know that you wanted to raise your hand as well. So hopefully everybody's doing okay. And like I said, we'll just wait probably about 2 more minutes and then we'll go ahead and get started with the webinar. And I do see that somebody's having an issue. Okay. You might see some movement in the screen as I go ahead and get ready to get the presentation up. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. We might have a few more people join us, but I want to welcome you to the Resource Conservation 101 webinar. And it's offered by San Mateo County RecycleWorks Volunteer Academy. We are going to be going over a number of topics today, a lot of them that are of interest for local programs related to energy, water, and waste and recycling. So before we get started, we like to do a little bit of housekeeping. So we'll generally go through just the outline of today's webinar, as well as how to use the webinar functions. We try and make this webinar as interactive and engaging for the attendees as possible. I know that sometimes it's a little hard to sit through 2 hours of looking at your computer, but we have Q&A and we have some polling questions and other things that you can participate in on your computer that makes it a lot more engaging and allows you to interact with us on this end. So hopefully you will utilize those functions. And I'm going to go ahead and walk through those. This is just a sample of what you should be seeing on your screen, the control panel, and it has quite a few pieces to it, so sometimes it can feel a little bit overwhelming, but I'm going to walk you through some of that. So real quick, I just want to welcome you and give you a little bit of information about what we're going to be doing. It is a 2-hour webinar today, and we aren't going to be taking any breaks during the session. However, if you need to get up, feel free to do so. The webinar should still be active when you get back. That's not a problem. But we do plan to go through pretty quickly through the 2 hours, quite a bit of content. The Resource Conservation 101 course is offered at no cost, and it's to provide volunteers with general knowledge about the 4 R's, which is reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot, as well as energy efficiency, water conservation and systems, and pollution preventions. So the goal is to basically introduce you to the basics of resource conservation. We want to share with you about local programs that are available, We want to connect you on where you can find out more information on some of these topics if you have additional questions or interest afterwards. And then we're hoping to enlist you as a future RecycleWorks Volunteer Academy volunteer and send you out to help create change in your community. So that's the goal of our webinar. And our speakers today are myself. I'm Judy Gregory. I'm with Go20 Strategies, and I'm contracted with RecycleWorks Volunteer Academy. We also have Kim Springer, who's with the County of San Mateo, and we have Kyle Ramey with Bosca. So I will do a little bit more of a formal introduction of each of these speakers as we go through the segments that they'll be presenting. So here we're going to talk to you about how to use GoToWebinar. So first of all, bring the panel up here. We are having everybody muted throughout this presentation, but there will be periods where we will unmute you for the Q&A segments. So if you do have questions later on, and we will open up we'll unmute, so you'll be able to do that. Just so you know, the system does monitor how involved you are in the system. So we have like a little panel that shows the attentiveness, and we try and get everybody to stay involved, especially during the polling questions. So there will be opportunities where they'll pop up. Here's some information on how you will navigate through the system. So we ask that you participate both through the audio and visual functions, and I see that everybody's connected, so that looks good. If you did join through the telephone, you should have received an audio pin, and it looks like everybody's input their audio pin, so we're good to go. And then this is what the bar will look like that you'll be navigating. So it allows you to raise hands and ask questions, which are going to be the two primary things we do, and I'm going to show you how we do that. We will have polling questions, and this is the fun part. Basically, we have about 8 or 9 polling questions that we do throughout this presentation. And when we do a polling question, you'll see a screen like this pop up on your computer, and it'll ask you to make a selection. I usually only give about 15 seconds for you to make a selection, and then I close that down. So try and respond promptly so that we can tabulate your responses in with the results. Then we also have question and answer segments where you can actually ask some questions via the computer. So during those times where we ask you to type in a response, you would go to the question panel, you would hit the plus, and then in the box you can log in your question. You can actually type it in. You can also raise your hand. If you notice in the segment up above, there's a place where you can raise your hand, and then I know that if we have time, we'll open up the speakers and I can call on you to actually ask your question. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to actually give you an opportunity to practice real quick. So a polling question is going to pop up. What is the function of GoToWebinar that allows the moderator to track and mute attendees? So I'm going to go ahead and launch that poll. Give me a second. The poll's open, and you should have seen the poll pop up on your screen. So go ahead and register your response. And once we have people that have responded, we'll go ahead and close it. Looks like we have a couple more people that haven't voted yet. So go ahead, one more person. If you want to respond. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close it. And I'm going to share the results. So this is what you'll normally see when we do a poll. In this one, 100% of the people chose the speaker. Actually, the answer is the audio pin. So using the audio pin when you log in with that allows me to control to mute or not mute you in the system. But that was just a good example of how the polling works. All right, so I'm going to hide that. And here's a quick agenda. Basically, we're getting ready to get started with the introduction to RecycleWorks Volunteer Academy. Then we'll go on to the energy section, and then we will go over solid waste at 11:40, pollution prevention. We'll wrap up with the last segment of water at 12:30, and then we'll close the session with a few minutes of Q&A and a few other things we want to share with you. All right. So with that, we're going to do an introduction to RecycleWorks Volunteer Academy. I want to introduce Kim Springer. He's the Resource Conservation Programs Manager at the County of San Mateo Office of Sustainability, and he also manages programs for the City and County Associations of Government and the Congestion Management Agency in San Mateo County. In these roles, he's developed innovative environmental programs, including the San Mateo County Energy Watch, an energy efficiency partnership between the CCAG and the local investor-owned utility PG&E, the Regional Integrated Climate Action Planning Suite, the county's RecycleWorks Volunteer Academy, Green Business and Green Building programs, and others. He has developed over $10 million of funding for energy and climate on behalf of the cities in San Mateo County and has about 25 years of experience in resource conservation. So I want to welcome Kim Springer.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning. There are a few things on the next slide that I'd like to go over. Let's start off with who is RecycleWorks, what is our organization and our mission, and take a quick look at our website. RecycleWorks is a program of the County of San Mateo. It was previously housed in the Department of Public Works. Its focus is, for many, many years, was specifically on solid waste, and over the years that has expanded. The mission, and I'll read this out, is RecycleWorks creates, delivers, and promotes recycling, composting, waste prevention, procurement, sustainability programs, including Green Business Program, and outreach at county facilities for residents, employees, businesses, visitors. I think you start to get the idea that it's a very broad program. It's meant to address energy, water, and specifically solid waste is where it originated, for everybody who is in the geographical area of San Mateo County. Recently, we transitioned into the Office of Sustainability, and it's a new county office, and the idea there was to bring together different sections of different departments within the County of San Mateo that work generally on sustainability. So this is our new home, and we're happy to be here. We have a new office, and we're able to collaborate more across county departments to help everybody in San Mateo County. So just as a quick overview, looking at the RecycleWorks Volunteer Academy, it's a training and outreach program, as Judy mentioned. We want to find resource conservation-minded folks in the community that have time to volunteer back to educate others. The program does justify itself by getting volunteer hours back, so we are looking for volunteers, but anything we can do through the program to educate the public and employees and business owners in San Mateo County, we want to do. In terms of the offerings, there's the webinar Resource Conservation 101, which you're on right now. And then there are a couple of 8-week courses that start. One of them starts at the end of January, and that's the Resource Conservation course, I believe, and that's a master course in resource conservation. It goes deeper into some of the things we'll be talking about today. And then there's a Master Composter and Solid Waste course, which is it's an extension of a program we've offered for a number of years. It's been very popular. It teaches about backyard composting, vermicomposting, the soil food web, all the things that are involved in composting, and how you can use the material, and background also in solid waste diversion. There'll be some individual workshops on green building and water conservation, one on green business, which is actually a separate program we have here at the County of San Mateo Office of Sustainability. And we're going to be adding in sustainable transportation. And so we're just kind of piloting that a little bit this year, and maybe in the next cycle of the program next year, by fiscal year, it'll be more incorporated into the program. So as you can see, Joe LaMariana is Waste Management Environmental Services Manager, and he and I have worked together in other lives, and he's the section manager for the program I'm the Resource Conservation Program Manager. If you want to know what I look like, I'm the guy in the middle. And then Ensu Lim is the person who actually coordinates the RecycleWorks Volunteer Academy program. So today's webinar is going to be on energy efficiency, solid waste and recycling, water conservation and water systems, and pollution prevention. So let's go ahead and get started with the energy program, and I am going to go ahead and speak to that today. We all generally know that when we get our bills in the mail, that we're getting them from PG&E. PG&E is what's known as an investor-owned utility, and they are the exclusive service provider for their entire territory. Their efforts are overseen by the California Public Utilities Commission, being the regulatory body, so they operate under the auspices, is I think the technical term for that. And their goal, of course, is safe, reliable energy at a reasonable price. And the two bodies, PG&E and the CPUC, work together in order to try and ensure that. Utilities own their own sort of generation, and certainly they own the distribution infrastructure. We'll talk a little bit more about other sources of energy outside of the utilities' generation capabilities, but that in general, that's how it works. So if we take a look at the energy mix has to do with where does our energy come from, and there are renewable sources, and there are sources that use fossil fuels to generate the energy. And if you look at the piece on the right, you can see that PG&E has a large, the energy that we use in our homes and businesses in San Mateo County comes from a combination. At the top, you'll see that 18% of it is from large hydroelectric, that there's a piece of it that's renewable at this point, natural gas-powered power plants. There's a nuclear energy piece and some unspecified, which are other sources of energy that PG&E doesn't specifically track. But that gives you an idea of where our energy comes from. And one of the things that's coming up now is community choice energy, which is a new program that you'll be hearing more about. And that allows a local jurisdiction or group of jurisdictions to actually purchase energy from their own sources. It'll still come through the power lines of PG&E, and you'll still get a PG&E bill, but the sources could be purchased from other ways. And it's a way of having more local control of the energy mix itself. So here's a question. A utility company, for example, PG&E, will encourage you to practice energy efficiency. Is that true or false? The results are that it is true, and in fact, that's correct. So you might ask why that is, and the reason behind it is that PG&E and the other investor-owned utilities in the state of California are actually compensated for their work on energy efficiency. It's what we call decoupling. Next slide.
Kim, are you not seeing the slide change?
I didn't see the slide change. I'm still on the quick poll.
Oh, you know why? Sorry. Okay. Sometimes I forgot to hide the poll. I was like, okay, it's going through here. Okay, now you should see, let's see.
Energy efficiency slide. That's what I'm on now.
Right. Actually, you might want to talk about that one. That was, I think you already talked about that.
Yeah, so this is what I mentioned, that decoupling refers to separating out the energy efficiency work that can be done from investor-owned utilities sales, essentially, and that makes the utility a bit indifferent to the selling energy, and sort of switches their focus to energy efficiency and other sources of reducing energy use. Energy efficiency, it's pretty basic. It's about using less energy to provide the same amount of service. Lighting gets more efficient over time, and as you upgrade your, for instance, in your home from incandescent lamps to CFLs, compact fluorescent, to LED lamps, you'll be using less and less energy, but you'll still be getting the light. So that's less energy to provide the same service. So how will we fill the new supply demand in the state of California? There's a definite interest in not building any more power plants. They're expensive to build. They have huge capital costs. Oftentimes they have great environmental costs. And so we have to figure out exactly how it is that we are going to meet our demands of our businesses and residents in San Mateo County and the state through other means. And there's energy efficiency and demand response. There's renewables, distributed generation, and conventional efficient fossil fuel generation. So funding for energy efficiency, it's good to sort of know the flow of the money. And if you look on your PG&E bill, you'll see that there's a line item. Many of us don't really know it's even there, but it's called a public goods charge. And so as a ratepayer, you're paying into this fund called a public goods fund. And that money is collected by PG&E and then put into the fund, and it's managed by the California Public Utilities Commission. PG&E, the money is contracted through PG&E to a variety of different energy efficiency programs that address commercial and residential and industrial and agricultural and various other segments of energy efficiency programs. When we think in terms of the policy and sort of the strategy, there are a variety of different acts that have been passed. The Global Warming Solutions Act, otherwise known as AB 32, is driving the state to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions. The original act was 15% below 2005 by 2020, and over time has grown now to 8% below by 2050. The Renewable Portfolio Standard, going back to the thoughts about the energy mix, the goal now is to be at a 50% renewables statewide by 2030. In addition to that, the California Building Code, which is the rules that new construction and remodeling can be subject to, is also attempting to reduce energy use by requiring more energy efficient and, for that matter, water efficient type fixtures. So here's the next question. What type of energy do homes in San Mateo County use more of, electricity or natural gas?
Okay, we've got 100% of the people voted.
So it looks like we have a 50-50 split on that answer. So the actual answer is natural gas. And that's very tricky because electricity is counted in kilowatt hours, and natural gas is counted in therms. But if you convert those to BTUs, and you'll see across the top, the energy consumption in San Mateo County is this huge number of thousands of BTUs. So it's actually even a larger number. But if you really look at it from a standpoint of that conversion in energy, 61% of the energy that we use is actually natural gas, and 39% is electricity. When you take a look at, if we pop back, if you take a look at the emissions, you'll find that the natural gas is a very residential is much higher than the residential electricity in terms of the emissions that they generate, and also for commercial, you'll see that the commercial actually and electricity and gas are about equal. Energy use in homes. What uses natural gas versus electricity? Well, there certainly is a loading order. We can talk about that for a minute. Loading order has to do with using less energy before you locally generate your own, which is to most commonly using solar panels. Installing solar, there have been great rebates. Some of them have pulled back, but the cost of doing the energy efficiency is generally much less expensive than actually installing solar to compensate for your energy use, and that would be electricity use. And remember, electricity is probably the smaller piece of the total energy use in a home. Vampire power. This is all those little charging items, appliances that have pilot lights. This is energy use that is constantly running, and there are a lot of approaches to reducing vampire and other loads. Down on that list below, you see the smart strips, and you can actually, I think one of the systems in a household that are notorious for eating up energy when they're not being used are televisions and amplifiers and other systems for audio and video. You can put those on smart strips where you turn on one piece of the equipment that would be on, it would be plugged in. When you turn that on, it switches the rest of the equipment on. So all the rest of the equipment isn't actually drawing any energy when it's not being used. Of course, lighting, we've talked a little bit about that, switching from incandescent to compact fluorescent and then onto LED lamps. And there are a variety of different LED lamps that produce different amounts of light, but they generally are very, very efficient. So what are the most cost-effective upgrades that you think to save energy in your home? Go ahead and type into the question box and let us know your thoughts.
All right, we'll give everybody a few seconds to type in some of their responses, and then I'll read those off. You would use hit the plus on the next to where it says question on your panel, and it should pop open a question box where you can go ahead and type in some responses. And if people don't do it now and they want to respond later, we can always come back to that as well. I don't see anybody has typed in anything yet, Kim, so I'm just going to, oh wait, here we have one. Let's see, so appliances and windows. Another person said LED lights, more efficient appliances, energy management software to see where energy is going. And then another person said, I would think solar and insulation. So those are the responses you've had so far. I'll go ahead and flip to the...
That's great. So those are all great responses, and it shows that either we're speaking to the choir in that the people who are listening already know some things, or we're getting the information out to the public, which is a great thing. One of the things, especially for natural gas heating, is duct sealing. You know, if you have a furnace that is running and it is, you know, an 80%, which is kind of the bottom line efficiency furnace of the past 20 years or so. If you have duct leaks that are, you know, losing 25% of the heated air that's going through those ducts, depending on where those ducts are located in the house, you're having to use 25% more energy in order to heat the house. So duct sealing is a very key, especially for natural gas heating. Attic insulation, of course, that's a comfort both in the summer and the winter. Hot water pipe insulation is a great way to both reduce the noise from hot water pipes, but also helping to not have to run water, wastewater, trying to get hot water to your bathrooms and kitchens. Air sealing, that is a very, very key point. There are places under houses and in the attic that you can do air sealing that will make a huge difference in the comfort of the home. This is, along with duct sealing, are, you know, some of the key strategies for insulating a house. Energy efficient cooling, there are new systems that are coming out now, heat pumps that can do both heating and cooling. An energy efficient water heater, just read the labels, go take a look around next time you're at one of the building supply places at how efficient the water heaters have become. Wall insulation, which was mentioned, is absolutely key. You definitely want to consult somebody who knows about wall insulation before doing so that you don't end up with any moisture problems in the process. A high efficiency furnace, those are great. I think furnaces are getting up to the 97 or 98% efficient furnace these days. They're a little bit more complicated and have other equipment associated with them, so they're not the simple 80% type furnace anymore. Energy efficient windows, which was also mentioned. Windows are a great way to go, especially if you have windows that leak air from the outside a lot. They also, one of the more expensive, however, energy efficiency upgrades. Cool roof is actually a system of putting a membrane up in the attic. It's most convenient to do when you do a re-roof, but it reflects a lot of the heat even better. It keeps the heat out of the attic, whereas attic insulation only keeps the heat in the attic from affecting the interior space, and it's only so effective at doing that. All right. So some of the things that impact your home energy use, certainly the more stuff you have, the more stuff you're generally powering, and that does have a great effect. Of course, the other part of it is the behavior of the occupants of the people in the building. And there are ways both for energy efficiency and water conservation that families can have habits that will help. Certainly smart strips, as we mentioned, is a great way to sort of curb that vampire power that comes from so much of our stuff. And you know, turning off lights and that type of thing is another good example of that. So there are a number of energy efficiency programs in San Mateo County. These are some of the residential programs. There are programs, there's a program starting at the left, the green box. There's an organization called El Concilio of San Mateo County. They run a low-income energy efficiency program. People whose the household income is below a certain level can receive a tremendous amount of services, things like weatherization, potentially attic insulation, and other measures to help them along. There's a moderate income program that the next two are both under the San Mateo County Energy Watch in the sort of turquoise color. There's a moderate income direct install program, which is just above the low income. And then there's other programs that are run for businesses and homeowners associations. Those are both run under the San Mateo County Energy Watch that you see there. On top of that, there's a program called Energy Upgrade California, and it's run by the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, and it's also out of our office here of sustainability for San Mateo County, and it addresses both single-family and multifamily energy efficiency with some very good rebates. Thing to know about your PG&E rates, there are a number of tiers, and I think it's almost appropriate they call it tiers, because when you get your energy bill, you might want to shed a tier if you find yourself in the third tier of the rates. The idea is that anything you can do to hold your energy use down at the lowest tier for the period of the month will save you a tremendous amount of money, because it's definitely a progressive cost schedule. Why focus on energy efficiency? So annual energy usage, the average, is 600,000 or 6,000 kilowatt hours. If you were to build that home more efficiently and make it a very efficient home, and this is talking about the loading order again, that you can cut your use in half, it is incredibly less expensive to do it, and takes a lot less roof space, maybe less visible when it's finally completed. So you want to do that energy efficiency first. That is definitely the rule of thumb, what the utilities try and promote, and definitely what we promote here at the county as well. There are a number of different resources that you can look to help you find ways to reduce your energy use. Of course, this program that we're speaking to you from is a program of RecycleWorks.org. If you go to that website, you'll find all kinds of resources there and links to the various programs on energy efficiency and, of course, water and solid waste as well. The San Mateo County Energy Watch, which is SMC Energy Watch. If you do a search, you will find that pretty quickly. Has a tremendous amount of resources there, number of different tabs for business and residents and other things, including climate action and the type of work that's being done through that program across the county. The City-County Association of Governments has a website that has some information on it. If you look up Energy Upgrade California program and the Bay Regional Energy Network, you'll find that. Of course, PG&E, because they are compensated, as we remember earlier in the webinar, we mentioned that because of the decoupling, that they're focused on energy efficiency as much as more that they're focused on their sales of their natural gas and electricity. PG&E My Energy site is a great place to find resources.
Hey, Kim, you had a question. Somebody asked, what is the cost of reducing the yearly energy consumption by the 50% compared to the $10,000 additional for the solar? And is that even realistic?
It is realistic, and again, it really varies depending on the household or the business. There are things that you can do which are relatively inexpensive that can make a huge difference. For instance, duct sealing is one of those things. Again, replacing windows tends to be fairly expensive, but we've had so much feedback from people who have just sealed air gaps and sealed their ducts, and they have reduced their energy use a lot, saved a lot of money that way already, and then the reduced energy use, allows them to get the solar on there. One of the things that people are surprised about is all the stuff that stuff slide. Really the smart strips is a very small investment compared to the amount of energy that could be saved there. So really, we encourage people to just kind of take an audit of where their energy is being used, and can certainly, through the BayRen program for residential, can get an energy expert to come in and take a look at what the opportunities and costs are.
Great. Thanks, Kim. I don't see any other questions that have come through. I know you probably wanted to make a quick mention of Jackie if
Yes.
people have additional questions.
Absolutely. So, note the email address or the phone number on the screen. So we have an energy expert. She's working on developing zero net energy programs with the cities across San Mateo County right now. Her name is Jackie Falconio. She's very well versed in all the energy work here. And zero net energy is not something, I don't think it's specifically on this webinar, but it's the idea of building such an energy efficient building to start with, what's called a high performance building, and then zeroing out the energy use by installing renewable energy locally on the building. And one of the questions that often comes up about that is, well, if you're using natural gas, how do you put that back? Well, a lot of the energy efficient, what are called heat pumps, will provide both heating and cooling, and they're fully electric. And so there is a movement going on to move away from natural gas and back to electricity, because it does have the opportunity to reduce greenhouse gas emissions the lowest if you can substitute any remaining energy use in the building with solar or renewables.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kim, for your presentation.
You're very welcome.
I don't see any other questions that come up, but if you do think of other things that come up later, you can still feel free to put those in the question box. And just a quick disclaimer, as soon as I start talking, my bird hears me, and so if you guys hear a bird in the background, I apologize, but that's nothing I can do about right now. So I wanted to share with you about another class that we have coming up that you might be interested in, especially if you do have an interest in energy, which is our Master Resource Conservation course. And about a quarter, maybe a little bit more of that class is going to be focused on energy. It starts January 20th, and it's going to be 8 consecutive weeks from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. We have Laura McCoyne as our lead instructor on that. She's really great. We'll have a number of guest speakers, and if you have an interest in energy, water, recycling, other issues, then you would really want to look into this Master Resource Conservation course. All right, so for the next 50 minutes or so, I'm going to be presenting to you on both solid waste and recycling, as well as pollution prevention. And as I mentioned earlier, my name is Judy Gregory. I'm with Go2Zero Strategies, and I'm contracted through Cascadia Consulting, who's the lead contractor through San Mateo County for this project. And I'm really excited to be here today. I've worked in the solid waste and recycling field for over 25 years, and I generally work with businesses and communities around the state to help implement zero waste strategies. I've also spent quite a few years recently developing training and curriculum programs for organizations and communities that's focused on sustainability, resource management, and zero waste. So I'm excited and happy to be here today and to share with you some of my favorite topics, basically recycling and resource management. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So what is solid waste? It's a term that many of us in the industry are familiar with, but it's not one of those generally used terms. But we want you to think about what are the things you throw away, and where are those going when you're done with them? Generally, municipal solid waste are those things that are being disposed of in landfills or incinerators, but they include things like durable goods, non-durable goods, packaging, organics, materials, construction and demolition. So what we're considering solid waste and what we're throwing into landfills are not necessarily waste, but they're things that lose their value to us. And the goal of resource management is to basically shift our mindset to resource management, away from wasting. Landfills haven't always been around, and how we deal with our waste has changed over time to include basically throwing it away. So today we want to talk about all of these aspects, including how waste is created, what are some of the national and local trends on disposal. We're going to talk a little bit about landfills and how they have evolved and the role they play today. And finally, we want to talk about resource management, including how we reduce, reuse, recycle, and compost, or what we call ROT, our fourth R, and how those play a role in us actually getting to zero waste. So the first thing we talk about is that basically in nature, there is no waste. So in nature, things are in cycles that occur naturally. And our Earth is actually a closed loop system where we don't have wasting occur naturally. Because in nature, there is no way. The Earth uses all of our waste byproducts from one system and puts them into another system as a fuel. So waste creation as we know it is a relatively new thing. It's a product of human culture, and basically managing and creating systems that better process these wastes instead of throwing them into landfills or burning them in incinerators is the goal. So this is just some examples of how what we think of as solid waste can retain their value in what we call a sustainable resource management system. So this example, scrap metal, can actually be used to create new products. When we talk about reuse, we can fix a bike. It can be repaired, so instead of having to buy a new bike. And even things that we think of that really have no value, like plate scrapings, food, can be turned into nutrient-rich compost, which has a great value. So, how is garbage created? Well, waste is generally, like we talked about, it's leftovers of things that we throw away, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's garbage. We actually all create things that we no longer need and they don't have a value to us in their original form, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to go into become trash or go into the garbage. So most of the stuff that we have and that we throw away does have a beneficial value in an SRM system. And the EPA estimates that 75% of American waste stream is recyclable, but we're only recycling about 30% of it. Okay, bear with me. Sometimes when I'm talking and doing the slides, I get a little bit behind. So basically what happens is when recyclable or usable or compostable materials are thrown into the garbage and they go into a trash truck and then they're compacted and mixed together, what happens is that they're often so times degraded by that process that then we can't effectively reuse, recycle, or compost them. Okay. So what we want to think about is what we've been talking about. Basically, in the beginning, there was no waste, but in a modern society, we generate and dispose of a number of resources on a daily basis. So when we're talking about resource management, we basically want to think about how we can manage products, packaging, food leftovers, and landscape and agricultural byproducts so that they're no longer wastes. All right. Okay. So I'm going to get you guys involved a little bit here. And like I said, I apologize. Sometimes going back and forth between the panels takes a little bit of time. But I want you all to think about what's an item that you use in your home that you'd like to figure out how to eliminate or find an alternative product that would reduce the amount of waste you're creating. So if you have some ideas, you can type them in now. You can even type them in later. We'll come back, kind of go through some additional conversations on this as we go through this part of the presentation. And we're going to try and loop back to some of these items and see if we've talked about them and maybe figured some of this out as we go through. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the SRM, which is called our Sustainable Resource Management Hierarchy, and it's something that most of you have probably been familiar with, at least this term, the reduce, reuse, recycle. It's very common. It actually was coined in the 1970s during some of the first Earth Days, and it's kind of that term that the population has come to embrace as you know, our environmental contribution. But most of us only really look at one piece of the term, which is the recycle piece. But what we really want to do is we want to look at this as a hierarchy, and there are two other terms, the reduce and the reuse, that come on top. And there's a reason behind that, because of the importance of reducing and reusing first. And so we're going to get a little bit more into that. But then we've also termed this fourth R, which has been more recent. Most of you might refer to it as composting, but so that we can make a fourth R, we call it ROT. So sometimes if you ever hear that term, the four R's, we're talking about reduce, reuse, recycle, and ROT, or composting. Okay, so the first term, the reduce, is waste reduction. And when we're talking about waste reduction, we put it on the top of the hierarchy for a reason, because it's actually the best way to save resources is by not using them in the first place. So that's what we mean by reducing, is we can completely eliminate them from our daily habits to begin with. And so by doing that, we reduce a number of the impacts associated with that. Some of the ways that we can actually reduce is reducing commercial packaging. We can implement policies regarding purchasing and contracts that will reduce waste. We can also redesign products, and this is a huge thing. A lot of waste comes just from inefficient design of products, also inefficient packaging used for marketing purposes, and not necessarily to enhance the product themselves, so that the packaging gets thrown away right after we've purchased a product. So really looking at redesign of products and redesign of packaging is a huge emphasis right now in ways that we can reduce waste. And then when we look at items that are problematic and that we can't find alternative uses for, just banning them altogether. So I think many of us are more and more familiar with the plastic bag bans. Many communities have also implemented polystyrene bans. So these are some of the ways that we can get rid of problematic packages or products altogether by reducing them, by just completely banning them. Although there are implications associated with that, and we want to make sure that we're not just banning products that we don't have alternatives for, but those are some ways that we can do that. Other things that we can do at home is that we can do, we can install low waste landscaping, we can grass cycle. Kim talked about replacing out our light bulbs. Also, eliminating disposable ware. I'm so surprised how many people use paper plates and disposable stuff inside their home, but it really adds to a lot of the volume of the waste created in homes. And then just using non-toxic cleaning products are all things that we can do in our house that are considered waste reduction. The other one that is so important that comes before recycling in the hierarchy is reuse. And reuse is not new. In fact, it's something that's actually been around for a really long time, but it's become more of a lost tradition. In the past, you know, we reused everything. It was very common for maybe a grandmother to take old jeans or old clothing and make quilts out of it. We would pass furniture down from, you know, one generation to the next, but that doesn't happen as much anymore. So reuse has had like a huge rebound recently, and so when we talk about traditional reuse, some of the key things that we used to see, we still do see thrift shops. They're very popular, but repair shops definitely have fallen off. We used to see those everywhere. Garage sales have always been popular, and swap meets. Those are some of the traditional reuse. But as we see it gain a lot of popularity in more recent times, some of our modern reuse are things like eBay. Very, very popular, probably one of the largest reuse companies in the world. FreeCycle, Craigslist, and then Street Bank and a number of other programs that allow you to share items within your community instead of having to buy them, like maybe a lawnmower. You use a lawnmower so infrequently that maybe you and your neighbors could share one. So lots of neat things to look at as far as the reuse component, and it's kind of exciting to see a lot of the new reuse businesses coming online. And then recycling and composting are basically considered the same. So they're on the bottom of the tier, and they're very important, but we generally want to try and reduce and reuse first, and then recycle and compost everything else. And we consider them the same because the process, one of them is with recyclable materials, generally papers and plastics and woods, metals, and then compost is more of the organic material, food, landscape, yard trimmings, or wood products as well. But the process is the same, that you take the input, which is the recyclables or the organic materials, and then you use them to turn it into another product. So some of the things that we see associated with this is the energy savings. When you recycle, most all materials see a pretty substantial energy savings over the life cycle of the product by recycling it. So you can see on the top, metal. Recycling of metal is huge. It has a huge amount of what we call embedded energy. And by recycling things like aluminum, copper, steel, you are not just recycling material, but you're reducing a lot of energy and water associated with mining virgin materials to create those products. Paper, plastic, glass, all of those recyclables carry a huge amount of energy savings by recycling them. Lots of great recycling programs locally, and then organics. We usually look at curbside programs. I know some of the curbside programs only allow clean greens and yard trimmings, but a lot of curbside programs are now incorporating the organic materials such as food. Other ways that we compost is through biosolids recovery. So for instance, some of the farms are collecting the manure or wastewater, and they're able to capture the biosolids and capture the energy from the biosolids. There's some cows, and some of the type of composting that we see is windrow composting. There's generally two types, aerobic and anaerobic. So the aerobic would be this type of composting where it's open air and it's aerated on a regular basis, and the air causes the decomposition of the material within it. Anaerobic digestion is something that we're seeing more and more of, where we take the materials and we entomb them, basically enclose them and deprive them of air, and we capture the embedded energy, the energy value of that material, the methane that's created, and we can feed that into the grid. And then afterwards, we take the material that usually comes out of that, and we can put that into some sort of either land application or composting process to actually get the value from that material as well. Okay, so we talked a lot about R's, reduce, reuse, and recycle. And this is not something that you have to answer now, but it would be great to have you type in some R's that you use in your daily life that you think will help eliminate waste. So you can reduce, you can reuse, you can recycle, but what are the things that you can do to eliminate waste that are your own version of an R? And here's a few examples of like marketing and outreach and education that you might see using R's. Obviously, here's our reduce, reuse, recycle, rot. But here's a few other that people have come up with. So respect, and kids in here had refuse it. And then here's a whole list of them: recycle, repair, refill, retool, reinvent, rethink. So it just gives you an idea of how you can incorporate R's into your daily life to help make a change. All right, so zero waste. What is zero waste? I know many of you have probably started to hear that term. It has become quite popular in more recent years. And what do we really mean by zero waste? Because sometimes when you hear that term, there's an immediate sort of rejection of that term. Well, how can you have zero waste? How is that even possible? Well, when we're talking about zero waste, what we're really talking about is the terms reduce, reuse, recycle, and compost. And if we do these things, then we can work towards zero waste. And obviously, there's a lot of other pieces that go into that. We need to make sure that we have the systems, the infrastructure, and the programs associated with doing those things, and definitely the education and outreach. And that's where the RecycleWorks Volunteer Academy comes into this, is that we want to empower you as local residents in your community to be able to share some of the information about the great programs, about the systems that are in place that residents and businesses can take advantage of to help reduce the waste that their business or home is generating, and just really plug into the infrastructure that's there. And so hopefully we can provide you information that then you're able to share and build this network of a better understanding and more involvement through the community and the programs. And then what are we talking about by closed loop? That's another big term that you hear quite a bit. Basically, closed loop has to do with preventing waste by better designing it and having better utilization of our resources. It also has to do with integrating that resource management system that we just talked about. We want to reduce the extraction of resources. And basically, this is what a closed loop system looks like. We're traditionally kind of used to a linear system where we extract materials, we manufacture products out of those materials, we distribute and sell them, we use them, and we throw them away. That's a linear system, and you see that on the top. But in a closed loop or a circular system, what happens is and you do still extract raw materials, but they go into the system, they're manufactured, they're distributed, and then they're used. But then rather than being disposed on a linear system, they go back into a system where they can be recycled or they can be reused, and that puts them back into either the process of being remanufactured or redistributed in their original or similar form. So that's what we want to really look at, is to mimic Earth and life cycles. If you remember that earlier video or the earlier slide where I showed you in Earth, nothing is away, we kind of want to mimic that system in our resource management system so that we're constantly in a closed loop and reusing products. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll, so get ready. In a closed loop system, what part of the process is generally eliminated or reduced? So let me launch that, and you should be able to go ahead and vote. I think we're waiting for one more person. Give you a few more seconds. If you haven't voted, go ahead and get that vote in there. Yay, we have everybody. Great. All right, so we had 75% of the attendees said raw material extraction is what's eliminated, and we had 25% say products and packaging. So the raw material extraction is what's eliminated predominantly, or at least it's reduced. It's not completely eliminated, but that is one of the things that we can definitely we can reduce substantially through a resource management system. Okay, so I'm going to hit on a few statistics and data just to give you an idea of the big picture. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, which we also refer to as the EPA, was created in 1970, and it actually has been tracking disposal and recycling data for over 30 years. So they did a 2012 report where they say that Americans generate about 251 million tons of trash each year, which is where we get the 4.38 pounds per person per day. So this is what happens. About 21 million tons is composted per year. we have 65 million tons is recycled, and that gives us our 87 million tons, or our 34.5% recycled or composted, our diversion rate in the U.S. The rest is incinerated. We have about 29 million tons of incineration. We don't see that a lot in California. That's more in eastern states, but it's pretty substantial amount of material is incinerated each year. And then we have 134 million tons, which is by far the most predominant way that material is disposed, is thrown into landfills. In San Mateo County, the per capita daily disposal is 4.01 pounds in 2013. It's a slight increase at that time, but basically from 2004 to 2013, the county had a 31% reduction in disposal. And then basically you could see that that there's about 543,000 pounds of material generated, and you could see how it compares to some of the other counties in the area. So Marin, San Francisco, Santa Clara, and then California overall. So San Mateo County is definitely below the California average, and it's right in there, maybe a little bit higher than some of the other counties that are local. And then this just gives you a snapshot. Many of you living in San Mateo County will live in one of these cities. So this just gives you a snapshot of the different city per capita generation. And you'll notice it's all over the place. So you'll see that some of the cities have very low annual generation, and some of them are substantially higher. So a lot of that has to do with just different dynamics, the amount of industry within the city. And so at the state level, there is a target that was established for each community based on what's called a baseline year. So initially they looked at the total generation per community and established a baseline, and then that's how the targets. So you'll see that, for instance, Atherton has a target of 11.4, whereas Foster City had a target of 3.7 pounds per day. So it's not like every city has to hit a certain number. They have to hit a specific reduction based on their baseline. So where are some of the materials coming from? Well, a big part of our disposal actually comes from packaging and containers. It represents one of the largest segments of our resource stream that's being disposed. And oftentimes it's very common materials, you know, papers, plastic, cans, and bottles. And according to a report that As You Sow did, they estimate that our packaging alone represents $11.4 billion worth of recyclables that are going into the landfill each year. So sometimes this is where the education is so important, because we have readily available programs to recycle these types of materials, but obviously they're not getting recycled for a reason. So getting better education and understanding of how to recycle is so important. Here's just an example of a few other things. Lead acid batteries are recycled very highly, 96%, and that has to do with a great infrastructure and a requirement for recycling that's very stringent. But then when you get into some other more common materials like aluminum, super easy to recycle, has a very strong value in today's economy, and yet we're only at about 50% for aluminum, slightly above that. So it should be much easier to recycle. And these are national recycling rates. So in California, some of the beverage containers especially are higher, but plastics is another one. Pollution in our oceans, we really want to get plastics out. And then electronics is a huge one. We've seen a very large growth in the in electronics over the last few years, and so really finding ways to make sure that they don't end up into landfills and in trash cans has been one of the larger focuses of recent years, and you've seen a lot of programs come online for that. Quickly, California is really a leader when it comes to recycling legislation and environmental legislation in all areas related to specifically solid waste and recycling. we've had a number of pieces of legislation, but 4 sort of landmark historical pieces. Back in 1989, AB 939 was the one that established our waste diversion goal that I talked about earlier, that each community targets, and that was 50% waste diversion by 2000. More recently, after AB 32 passed, which is a greenhouse gas reduction, it was determined that part of that greenhouse gas reduction needed to occur through the reduction of CO2 or CO2 emissions from landfills at 5 million metric tons. So that caused a number of other pieces of key legislation that we're actually working on now, and you're seeing a lot of new programs come in place. One of them is AB 341, which is the mandatory recycling for businesses and apartments, and then AB 1826, which is our mandatory organics, actually kicks in April of this year. So businesses and multifamily complexes that are generating 8 cubic yards a week or more of organics will need to comply and participate in recycling programs of those organics. So you'll probably start to see quite a few things happening locally. Okay, so here's another polling question. Which of the following would not be considered solid waste? I'm going to go ahead and launch that. You should be able to participate. Okay, we need a few more people to vote. I'm going to close it out. Okay, great. Actually, we got everybody. All right, so 50% of you said industrial chemical byproduct, 25% said styrofoam packaging, and 25% said food scraps. All right, so the answer is the industrial chemical byproduct. We don't necessarily deal with those types of materials or toxic materials or liquid waste when we're talking about solid waste, but when you're talking about solid waste, whether it be at a business or a home, we do include food scraps, diapers, styrofoam packaging. All those are things that end up in either the waste or the recycle bins, and so the community has to figure out how to implement programs that deal with all of these materials. Okay, I'm going to go quickly through a little bit more, and then we're going to hit into the pollution prevention section. But basically, landfills, as we heard earlier, 134 million tons per year. So why do we need landfills? Well, there's evidence that the creation of waste dates back to the time of hunter-gatherers, and we know that a lot of the ancient civilizations did create waste, but we didn't really have a system for managing these wastes until more recently. There is evidence that starting around 500 BC, that Athens, Greece started requiring people to dump their waste about a mile outside of the city limits. But realistically, it wasn't until the 1800s that we had sort of a waste crisis, and we started to recognize that there were issues associated with the waste that was being created. So it was during, say, the time of the Industrial Revolution that people began to live in these small towns and cities, and at that time the practice was just to throw stuff into the streets, let the animals eat it, but there were also a large number of diseases like the bubonic plague, typhoid fever, and there were just hugely unsanitary conditions in the communities. So that's when you started to see local governments at that time realize that they needed to put into practice waste management strategies to protect the health and well-being of the people. We saw the very first modern sanitary landfill was actually built right here in California in Fresno in the 1930s. However, the practices at that time were basically just to throw everything, toxics, metals, water, food, animal waste, agricultural byproducts into a hole that wasn't lined and to cover it up. And so that had a lot of issues as well with leaching of toxins into our water. And so we've started to see a lot more stringent landfill regulations starting in the 80s and 90s. But there were a lot of issues associated with early landfills. Locally, Ox Mountain is the landfill where probably a majority of the material goes from San Mateo County. It's located in Half Moon Bay, and it takes in 3,000 to 3,500 tons a day. It's actually slated to close in 2040. It does have a gas collection system in place where it collects the gas, the methane that's released from the landfill, and it goes to power local homes. It accepts a wide variety of material, including hazardous waste. Other local facilities are the Hay Road landfill and the Newbie Island landfill, and then there's a number of transfer stations where materials come into and then they are shipped out to more distant landfills. The issues with landfills are predominantly two key issues: methane and leachate. Methane is a greenhouse gas, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, but that basically is emitted into the environment in the form of methane or greenhouse gas, and then leachate goes down through the bottom of the landfill. It's a liquid and goes into the water table. So the issue is that methane, which is created when you entomb organics in a landfill, is more powerful than CO2. And generally CO2 is what we measure our greenhouse gases by. CO2 has a lifespan of 100 years. Methane only has a lifespan of 23 years. So when you look at how potent methane is over a 23-year horizon versus spreading it out over 100 years, it's about 70 to 72 times more potent than CO2. And landfills are one of our biggest sources of methane into the environment. So that's why it's so important that we reduce the amount of organics going into landfills so that we can reduce this very potent greenhouse gas. And then leachate, basically what happens is when it rains or when water goes in, liquids go into a landfill, eventually they work their way down to the bottom and they form a contaminated liquid because it's going through, it's not just a liquid, but it's going through metals, it's going through toxic materials and lots of things that go into the landfill, cleaning products, things like that, that all mix together create this sludgy liquid that goes down into our groundwater. So if you want to find out more information, there's lots of information on the website. If I have time at the end of this presentation, I will take you through the website to show you online. But you can find out who your local haulers are, what they accept, what types of programs they have. There's recycling tips. There's all sorts of good information on the RecycleWorks.org website. That will help you. There's a hotline. You also have access to the city staff. And you can link through to the other hauler websites as well to contact the hauler that's servicing either your home or your business. Okay, so one more polling question. Let me go ahead and get this ready over here. How many times more potent is methane as a greenhouse gas as opposed to CO2? You can go ahead and vote. We need a couple more people to vote. We're almost done. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and shut it off. So about 2/3 of you said 72 times, and 1/3 of you said 100. And the answer is 72 times. So that's why it's so important to try and get the organics reduced in landfills and get just material in general reduced from landfills, because they're such a huge contributor to greenhouse gas and the issue of global warming. Okay, all right, so I'm going to move on to the last section before I hand it over to our water speaker. We're going to talk a little bit about pollution prevention, or P2. So what is pollution prevention? When we talk about pollution prevention, we're talking about reducing or eliminating waste at its source. We want to promote non-toxic or less toxic substances. It's definitely implementing conservation techniques. We want to reuse materials rather than putting them in the waste stream. And most importantly, one of the things that I'm going to focus on is just the adequate and convenient collection of these pollutants and toxic substances, because there's a lot of them that we generate on a daily basis through the purchase of products, through our electronics, through our cleaning products, through our lighting products, and they don't belong in the trash and they don't belong in the recycle bin. And what do we do with them? And if it's not convenient, then what's going to happen? We're just going to put them where it's convenient to begin with, which is in the trash or the recycle bin, and then they pose issues. So realistically, we need to make sure that it's not just available, but it's convenient. The other thing that we have to do oftentimes is legislate these products, because if we don't, then steps aren't taken to make these convenient or available collection programs. Sorry. So California has been very aggressive in a number of laws focused around materials which are problematic, which result in pollution through illegal dumping or illegal disposal or improper disposal. Some of these you know about, and some of them you may not know about. The bottle bill was a huge one, 1986, and we think of that, we're like, beverage containers aren't pollution. Why would you consider that a pollution prevention? Well, actually, a lot of times single-use beverage containers are just littered in the streets and they weren't being disposed of properly. So that was a really, really huge piece of legislation for us that kind of started the momentum for a lot of aggressive legislation. Since then, we saw quite a few in this decade. Electronic Recycling Act was passed in 2003, the Paint Recovery Act in 2010, along with carpet, and more recently we've had the used mattress and recycling. We've also had some legislation on pharmaceuticals. So lots of things going on, and as you can see, these are problematic materials that there's not really convenient recycling, so these materials were ending up in the landfill. Locally, some of the policies that we've seen to help with the reduction of pollutants is through zero waste policies, plastic bag bans, polystyrene bans, some bottled water ordinances, and then, like I referred to, the safe drug disposal ordinances. Because what are the issues? Well, we'll use the bag, for example. The plastic bag is a huge pollutant in the environment. You guys see plastic bags on the sides of streets, on freeways. They end up in our waterways and our oceans. They end up in our storm drains, and they cause a huge amount of problem, especially for wildlife and for ocean life. And it really doesn't need to be an issue, because when you think about it, there is very simple, convenient, available alternatives through the use of reusable bags and other practices that we can implement to reduce them. April 22nd in 2013 is when the ordinances went into effect in San Mateo, in most cities, but in 2012, San Mateo County actually implemented its reusable bag ordinance. So most of the cities in the county are participating in that. So you should probably be very familiar with that when you go in the stores. One of the more recent pieces of legislation that is also important is the Safe Drug Disposal Program. We consider this a form of EPR, or extended producer responsibility, where we ask for companies to take back products and to take responsibility for their products. So San Mateo County passed their safe drug disposal program in April of last year. Some of the other things that are really important that oftentimes get illegally disposed or improperly handled are, oops, sorry about that, e-waste and hazardous waste. So, sorry, my system is being stubborn. So it's really important that we make sure that things like light bulbs and batteries, solvents, paints, materials like that don't go into our trash can, and that we properly dispose of them. And I'm going to tell you how you can do that through a number of collection programs in San Mateo County. So the County Environmental Health operates a large number of programs that you can participate in. There's at your door collection programs operated not in all of the communities in San Mateo County, but in a number of them. And the website will give you access to which communities operate that, where you actually can call in and you can set up a day where they come by and collect a variety of materials at your door, things like paint, light bulbs, batteries. There's also drop-off that's open, and I have the hours. I believe that it's every Thursday through Saturday. Yes, always open Thursday through Saturday for the permanent sites. And then there's special revolving days that you can drop off material where it'll move from one area in the county to another. There's used oil collection programs, and some of those are also operated curbside. And then there's paintcare.org. I don't have the website up there, but if you Google paintcare.org, you can put in your zip code and it will tell you where you can drop off paint for free. And it's very convenient because most of the paint retailers in the state are a Paint Care authorized collector. So for the most part, anywhere you can buy paint, you can take it back for free and drop it off, as well as a number of retail sites have implemented take-back programs. You'll see Lowe's and Home Depot and Target. A lot of them, when you walk through the door, you can drop off plastic bags, you can drop off batteries, you can drop off cell phones, you can drop off light bulbs, things like that. So there's a number of programs, and the RecycleWorks.org website is a great resource for finding out more information. So unfortunately, a lot of the pollution that comes through the illegal or the improper handling or improper disposal of these materials ends up in places we don't want it. A lot of it ends up in the storm drains, and then it'll go down into the waterways and the water systems that feed into the oceans, and other just end up on our land and have a lot of environmental effects and impacts associated with that. So things we want to do, we don't want to put anything into the storm drain. We want to make sure our storm drains stay clean and that only water is going into them. Clean up all of our pit waste. Removing dirt, leaves, and grass from your lawn or from the gutters is great, because if they go into the storm drain, they clog it. We don't want to litter. And then just you can actually take actions to participate in cleanup events in your local communities that help with this. So I'm going to ask everybody to be really honest, and don't worry, nobody will judge you, but because of your lack of understanding or of how to properly dispose of materials, what are some of the items that you have probably improperly disposed before? So I'm going to go ahead and launch this. Paint, light bulbs, batteries, electronic waste, hazardous waste. You can mark, I think you can mark multiple on this one as far as what materials that you know you've thrown into the trash or the recycle bin that probably didn't belong there. Okay, I think we have everybody's voted. A lot of people said batteries. Huge. It's such a small item, and it seems so insignificant to go out of your way. You can just, you hide it in the trash can and nobody knows. That is a huge one. Hazardous waste, yes. Oftentimes we have little jars or bottles or cans of leftover paint or thinner or cleaner products that are old and we just don't want around the garage anymore. I know for me, light bulbs was always a big one. So there are programs for these in the county, and we want to make sure that we tap into them so that we're properly disposing of them. And I would just say, I'm going to bring up the website really quick. If you have any questions, you can type them into the question box. You can also reach out to me at judy@go20.net, or my phone number is there if you have any questions. And I just wanted to bring up why Kyle is getting ready to make his presentation. I'll introduce him in just a minute. Here is the RecycleWorks.org website. It's very simple, RecycleWorks.org. You can come over here and you can find out a lot of information. First of all, over on the right, you can see under sustainability, our Volunteer Academy is where you can click and you can go sign up for some of these other courses and workshops that we've been talking about. Over on the left side, Reduce, Reuse, Recycle, you can find your garbage company. You can find out more information for things at your home, at work. The one we were just talking about, the hazardous waste, is one of my favorite places on the website. It has a ton of resources and links here. So if you scan through, sometimes you have to look through it, but here's information on the drop-off program with the drop-off link. Down here is At Your Door program. There's flyers on upcoming events. And then here's information on paint recycling. So it's just a really, really great page on the website that gives you more information. And you can see there's lots of great resources and links there that you can tap into. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and transition. Give me 1 second. I have to bring up Kyle's presentation. All right. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Kyle Ramey. He's a recent alumni of the AmeriCorps program, Civic Spark, which was a one-year commitment to the governor's initiative to build capacity of local governments to address climate change in California. During his time with Civic Spark, Kyle worked with the San Mateo County Energy Watch on water-related projects, specifically dealing with K-12 public schools within the county. Additionally, he's worked with BOSCA on coordinating outreach campaigns concerned with various water conservation rebate programs. He's developed and implemented a new water conservation public education program and laid the groundwork for a school audit pilot program that would assist public schools in implementing water-saving measures. He currently works at BOSCA as a water conservation representative, assisting on various water-related programs and projects. So I'd like to introduce Kyle.
Thanks, Judy. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you perfect.
Okay, great. So as Judy said, I work for BOSCA as a water conservation representative, and today we're going to talk a little bit about ways to conserve around the house, indoors and outdoors, and we're going to talk a little bit about the drought, talk about what BOSCA does, who we are, what we do, and who we represent. We're going to talk about the water system overview, where we get our water from, upcountry and locally. Like I say, we're going to talk about the drought update, the governor's order, and the local actions being implemented to address that order. Talk about ways to conserve indoors and out, simple steps to save, a little bit of leak detection, and then we'll close with rebate and incentive programs. So the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency, we're a special district that represents the interests of 26 major water suppliers in mostly San Mateo County, a couple in Santa Clara County, and a couple over in Alameda County. Basically, our service area covers most of the peninsula, the coast, everything up until the SFPUC service area, and East Bay up until the East Bay Mud service area. We serve about 1.7 million residents and over 39,000 businesses. All of which rely on the San Francisco regional water system. Next slide. This graphic shows the BOSCA agencies that are served by the SF regional water system and where we get our water from. So as you can tell, about 85% of the upcountry watershed is where we get most of our water. Hetch Hetchy Reservoir specifically that most people know of, Lake Eleanor, Lake Lloyd, New Don Pedro, and about 15% comes from the local watershed, although most of that is used as emergency supplies, such as the Crystal Springs Reservoir. This graphic shows in a little bit more detail our service area. All the highlighted areas are our member agencies. On the right-hand side, you'll see all of our member agencies listed. I'm sure many of you probably belong to one of these water agencies. And yeah, basically we cover the peninsula, South Bay, and a little bit of the East Bay. So this graph here is going to show the gross gallons per capita per day of water use over the past 30 or so years. And as you can tell, it is definitely been decreasing over the years. In 1986, we use about 185 gallons per capita per day, and that's within our service area on average. In 2014, it was about 124. Residential has shown the same sort of trend, 104 gallons per capita per day in 1986, and has decreased all the way down to 77 gallons per capita in 2014. This highlights that a little bit more, showing that even though the population has increased by over 25%, we use actually 10% less water today, and I think that's because of all of our conservation and also people being a little bit more aware. I think the drought also kicks in, which is why you see a big drop between 2010 and 2014. But the green line represents population, and the historical demands are represented by the blue line. You can tell that it's been decreasing even though population has increased. So many of you know that California is in a drought right now, and the State Water Board actually passed its first mandatory urban water limits in state history. Governor Brown initiated this 25% mandatory cutback, and this 25% across the state. And a big reason why is because of the thin snowpack. So this was a primary driver for the governor's action. As you can tell, in 2011, we were at about 171% of the average of how much snowpack we like to see, especially within the winter months. But in 2015, we were at 5%, and that's a huge decrease, especially considering that it is probably the largest source of fresh water that we get is in the Sierra Nevada snowpack that drains into the Hetch Hetchy Reservoir. So what does a 25% statewide reduction mean for local agencies? Although it's a 25% mandatory statewide reduction, depending on how much water each agency uses, we'll put them in a certain tier of a conservation standard. So for example, City of Daly City and East Palo Alto use maybe 45 to 50 gallons per day. So their conservation standard is much lower than a really high water user such as the town of Hillsborough or Bear Gulch using the 36th percentile. So if you use more water, your conservation standard will be a little bit higher to even out the average throughout the state. These are the prohibited uses of water for everyone. I won't go through all of these, but they range from using potable water to wash sidewalks and driveways to installing hoses with a shutoff valve. And it shows not only prohibited uses for everyone, but also required for water suppliers. So water suppliers have to achieve a conservation standard anywhere between 4% and 36%. They have to implement certain programs to help reach these goals and notify customers about leaks that are within the customer's control. It also means a little something for businesses as well. So restaurants, other food services can only serve water upon request, so things like that. So it does affect everybody, either if you're on residential or a commercial level, or even supplier. So what can be done to conserve? We've talked a little bit about the drought and what it means for our local agencies, and a little bit of what it means for residents. However, what things do we offer that can help within this water conservation for our residents and for our commercial entities? So we do offer rebates, which we'll get to closer to the end, education programs, which are 100% free, and you can learn a whole bunch about landscaping and how to conserve around the home. And also many water agencies offer free stuff to help, like shower heads or things like that. So we're going to get into a little bit of ways to conserve, and we'll start indoors first. So let's ask a polling question. What do you guys think is the largest source of water usage in a single family home? And this is outdoors or indoors.
Okay, we're waiting for people. Nobody's voted yet. There we go. They're starting to come in. We need a few more people to go ahead and select which option. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close it. I'm going to share the results with you, Kyle.
All right, so it looks like 50% of you said landscaping, 50% said showers. All right, let's see what the answer is. So actually, 50% of you were correct. Landscaping does account, this is on average over the entire United States. Over 50% does account for landscaping, and it's mainly because a lot of people have green lawns. Grass is very water intensive, and a lot of people are uneducated on how much to actually water. They like to leave their irrigation timers set at a particular time. They don't necessarily change it throughout the year depending on weather. So these things can definitely lead to high consumption at home, keeping your lawn alive. The other close seconds are toilets and showers, and we'll get to that in just a sec. So let's talk about inside first. The biggest water users inside the home, and this was taken from the Mid-Peninsula indoor water uses, and that's typically Belmont and parts of San Carlos are under the Mid-Peninsula district. About 28% of the water consumed in homes goes to your showers, 23% to faucets and toilets, and this is on average. So let's talk about how we can conserve. So talk a little bit about low flow shower heads. Your standard shower head gives about 5 to 8 gallons per minute. Low flow is about 1.5 to 2 gallons per minute, so it's large savings right there. Main question I always get asked is, so if I get a low flow shower head, does it affect the comfort level of my shower? And nowadays with manufacturers taking this into account, I can guarantee you that low flow shower heads can be just as comfortable, and they take in different statistics in terms of how to deliver larger droplet size, even though it's low flow. So there's other flow options such as flow control inserts, which makes it even lower gallons per minute. And then shower shutoff control valves, which if people like to shave or brush their teeth in the shower, you can actually turn it to a trickle. And then when you're done, turn it back on and the water's still hot. So it's just using water very efficiently while you're in there. And then most shower heads will say on it how big the gallons per minute is. However, if you're not sure, what you can do is hold a gallon container under a shower head, clock the time it takes to fill. And for example, if it fills in 15 seconds, the flow rate you know is 4 gallons per minute. It's probably time to change to a water efficient one. So water efficient faucets, your standard across the board usually gives you about 2.2 gallons per minute. However, if you install a water efficient WaterSense, always look for the WaterSense logo when buying a water efficient appliance. Kitchen, because you use it all the time, it's usually going to be about 1.8 gallons per minute or less. The bathroom, about 1.2 gallons per minute or less, and public bathrooms, about 0.5. Many water agencies, and I would strongly recommend checking with your own, provide free faucet aerators upon request, and other things that can help with this as well. So how to check for toilet leaks. A lot of people don't know if their toilet's leaking, and they see it on their water bill, and they're saying, why we don't use this much, what's going on? So a great thing that you can do is actually buy dye tabs, and almost all water agencies offer these for free. They're very easy to obtain. What you would do is shut off the flow supply to your toilet, drop a dye tab in the top tank, leave for about 30 minutes, come back, and if there's dye within the bowl, then you know that there's a leak. And most of the time, it's probably because of a flapper, and you can buy those at any Home Depot, Orchard Supply, whatever, and replace it yourself. But we also offer rebates for toilets that need to be replaced. So the high efficiency toilet rebate that Bosco and its participating member agencies offer, we offer up to $125 per toilet. Now the $125 is for MAP premium HETs, and we'll talk about what those are in a second. But we do ask that it's 1.6 gallons per flush is the one that's being replaced, and subsequently we offer a $75 per standard HET. We'll talk about what both those mean. So an HET is a modern water efficient toilet that is designed to use 1.28 gallons per flush or less. It uses less water, it removes waste efficiently, and it performs better than your standard toilet. For example, if you're using a 3.5 gallons per flush, which there aren't too many left, but a lot of homes still do have them, you can save about 13,000 gallons per year if you do replace one that uses a 3.5. And water agency rebates for these particular toilets are up to $75. So I get this question a lot. What is a MAP Premium HET? And basically, they have certain requirements that regular HETs don't have. We do have a list on bosca.org, and I will show you that site a little bit later. And we have a link, maptesting.com, that shows all the 164 qualified toilet fixtures from about 30 different brands. Now, the MAP Premium has to flush no more than 1.1 gallons. Most of them are about 1 flat. Saves almost 20% more water compared to the current WaterSense HET. It demonstrates a MAP rating of at least 600 grams of solid waste removed in a single flush, and it has to be certified to the EPA WaterSense specifications. Rebates are $125 for these, and like I said, go to maptesting.com to see which ones qualify for this particular rebate. So how to check your flush volume. This is something that's easy if you don't know what it is. Some of them say it, some of them don't, especially if they're a little bit older. What you would do is you would remove the top tank of the lid, make a mark, do the same thing in the bowl, turn the water completely off, and flush it. Take a 1 gallon container, fill the bowl and fill the tank, and depending on how many gallons it takes to fill both those, that's how you know your gallons per flush. So if that ends up being 3.5, it's probably time to change out the toilet. The graphic on the right is a little out of date. I think that was last fiscal year's, but now it's up to 125 for those 2 specific brands, and you can learn all about this application on bosca.org. So in conjunction with PG&E, our member agencies also offer a clothes washer rebate. It's an energy and water rebate kind of combined, and if shopping for a new washer, make sure that it's on the most efficient Energy Star list, and we offer up to $150 per washer on that one. All right, so let's move to outdoors. Talk about a couple of simple steps to save water outdoors. An example would be to use a broom to clean the sidewalks instead of a hose, using water efficiently only when you need it. And also install an automatic shutoff valve on your hose nozzles. And a lot of member agencies actually require this, but if not, it's a good thing to invest in. So here are some more simple steps to save. It's important to water lawns and plants only at night or early morning before dawn. Obviously, if you're watering in the sun, it's going to evaporate quicker, and it's a less efficient way to water your landscape. Test soil moisture before watering. Obviously, if the top 2 inches feel damp, you don't need to water, especially after a noticeable rainfall. A lot of member agencies offer these moisture meters on the right for free, and they test the moisture level of the soil so you know when to water. And also, it's recommended that you follow your city's watering schedule, typically 2 days per week maximum. And you know, the rainy season is here. We got some significant rain in December and January, so adjust those irrigation timers accordingly. You don't want to water too much if it's raining. So this is another requirement from some of our member agencies, and most of them have adopted this, but not all. Odd number addresses are required to water on Monday and Thursday, and even number addresses are Tuesday and Friday. But do check with your agency to know which one to do. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about a couple of rebate programs and some other opportunities and some great resources that we have on our website for you guys to take advantage of. So this is a Lawn Beyond program. It's a very popular program. However, it is very time intensive. There can be a lot of steps to this, hiring a landscape architect unless you'd like to do it yourself. Also, picking out the right plants and planning. It can be very difficult. However, we do offer pretty good rebates for this. Most agencies offer about $1 per square foot. Some offer $2, and a couple offer $4 per square foot. And you can check out your own member agency on our website and see if it participates. And if they do, give them a call, or you can give us a call and we can walk you through the steps. We also have some great resources on the Lawn Beyond page on our website that can help you through this process. But it is the most significant. As we talked about earlier, about 54% of our water goes to our landscaping. We are watering regularly, and this is a way to cut that out completely with water efficient landscaping, and it looks good too. So our rain barrel rebates, we offer up to $100 per 50 gallons of storage capacity, or up to the total cost of the rain barrel. About 50 comes from the local water agency, and 50 comes from the San Mateo County-wide pollution prevention program. If you are outside of San Mateo County, but your water agency does participate, you're eligible for the 50. If you're in both, then you're eligible for the $100. This is just a quick little slide on how to check for leaks. I would recommend going to the link put up top, California Urban Water Conservation Council. They have some great ways to check for leaks on their website. But this is just one way that you can do it. You can put a toothpick basically on your meter and turn all your water off completely. And if the meter has moved in about 30 minutes when you return, then you know you might have a leak and you definitely need to get it checked. So for Cal Water residents, this fiscal year they decided not to participate with us particularly on these programs, but they do offer very similar ones. So they offer the high efficiency toilet rebate, they offer the clothes washer rebate in conjunction with PG&E. They also offer smart irrigation controller rebates as well, water use efficiency evaluations, free sprinkler nozzles, turf removal rebate program, which is similar to our Lawn Beyond program, and they offer free conservation kits. So if you are a Cal Water customer, give them a call and they can help you out with these particular programs. We also offer water efficient landscape classes. Now these are 100% free. We offer them in the spring and fall of each year. You can check them out at bosco.org/classes. We have the spring schedule rolling out here pretty soon, hopefully within the next month. And you can learn about sustainable landscaping, alternatives to lawn, habitat gardening. We have great instructors, and these are 100% free, and some of them are hands-on as well. This is a resource that not a lot of people know about, but is one of my favorites on our website, actually, especially if you're doing the Lawn Beyond program or just trying to redo your landscape altogether. BayAreaGardening.org, another link at bosco.org you can find in the Lawn Beyond section. And what it is you can see what other people have done. You can compare. You can also click on specific plants that will show certain statistics about how big they get, how much water they use, and you can add them to your list. So it simplifies the choosing process because our approved Bosco list is very extensive. So check this out. It makes it more inclusive, makes it more visual. It's a great resource, and I highly recommend it. So in conclusion, water conservation benefits everybody. It increases the water supply, the water system reliability. It's a solution to meet the planned needs of the community. And I think, as we move forward, we need to promote more efficient use of our resources because that's where everything begins. Also, everyone likes to save money. If you're reducing your water and energy use, you're also reducing the cost. And it also benefits the environment and community sustainability as a whole. Please visit bosco.org for more ways to save. All the links that, all the information that we've talked about today, most of it can be found on our website. We're in the middle of revamping our website to make it a little bit more user-friendly. So do take a look at that within the coming weeks. I put my contact information on here if you have any questions about what we talked about today. That is the main number for our office. And I also put my supervisor's name, Andre Johnson, on there as well. She's our water resources specialist, and she can help as well. So thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, Kyle. That was a great presentation, and I just want to let people know that I'm going to be switching things over, but if you have questions for Kyle, you can go ahead and type those in. Okay, so there is a question. Is there no automated way to identify leaks, measure the toilet level? People don't want to spend too much time on this, especially as everything gets smarter. So that was a question geared towards you.
I'm not sure of any automated ways to check that. I do know that some water agencies are actually installing some smart irrigation meters that will detect leaks and give you a heads up about that. In terms of the toilet, there really is no other way to do it unless, it has it listed on the toilet. But it doesn't take long at all. I mean, it could probably take you about 5 to 10 minutes to fill up, your tank and your bowl. So, but I would check with your local water agency to see if there are incentives for installing smart irrigation controllers or water meters that can detect those leaks for you.
Great, thanks. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so I wanted to, we're going to wrap things up, but I want to share a couple more things with you. First of all, before the webinar closes, I wanted to alert you to the bottom of your panel. There's a section called Handouts. If you hit the plus on that, there is a link there. You want to do that before we close out the webinar because it won't be available after. And if you open that in your computer and then you can save it, it's basically a list of a lot of resources, websites, agencies, contact information for how to find out more information on all the things we've been talking about today. A couple other things I want to talk to you about are a few more courses. So if you're interested in recycling, if you're interested in composting and organics, we have a master course starting the Master Compost and Solid Waste course, which starts February, that is March, should be March 9th. I'm pretty sure, maybe February 9th. Okay, I have February 9th. I was thinking March, but I think it is February. Sorry about that. And that's also 8 consecutive weeks going from 6 to 9 p.m. And our instructor on that is Joe Lees. And so you can find out more information on the website. And then, these are some of our questions. We talked about resources. We talked about the Master Resource Conservation class. It's January 20th. And then a few other things that I wanted to alert you to is a green building and water conservation workshop, which will be on March 26th. And then we have a green business workshop that starts May 28th. And then we have the new sustainable transportation series that Kim talked about. It's completely new. We're just starting that. There's going to be 2 webinars in that series, one in March and one in April. And that will culminate into a hands-on event in May. So lots of great ways to plug in and get involved through the RecycleWorks Volunteer Academy and ways to find out information on all these key topics that are so relevant to conservation in California. So before we leave, we would like you to answer one more poll. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that just to try and find out which of the information pieces that we've shared with you today are most relevant. So if you could just click on one or more of these topics, that would be great. I'm going to give everybody a couple more seconds to choose the ones that are most relevant or most interesting to them. Okay, I've got that information, and if you have more information, she wasn't with us today, but usually Insue is on our webinars. She's the point of contact. She is the RecycleWorks Volunteer Academy coordinator, and here is her information if you have any questions about any of the classes, the programs, how to get in touch with any of our speakers, or how to navigate through the website. She would be your point of contact for that. So I think that just about wraps it up. Kyle, Kim, do you guys have any closing remarks before we sign off?
Yeah, this is Kim. I'd like to add that certainly email Insue at eulim@smcgov.org, but also really consider going to the RecycleWorks website. Down the center, when you get to the homepage, you'll see the RecycleWorks Volunteer Academy. It'll have a list of all those classes and things that are going on there, and it'll allow you to know when the classes are and when the events are happening. And I really encourage you also, if you're not specifically interested in some of the other classes, there may be people that you know that you can move to the program. The goal is to really resource the county and create, sort of a mass of people that are going out into the community and spreading the word about resource conservation, about energy and water, and trying to make an environmental difference. So you or others that you know may be interested in the programs, and we really hope that you'll take part. You'll be joining kind of a crowd of other people that have been involved, that have taken courses before you. We have 2 events each year where we serve up some food and bring people together and bring in special speakers. And the volunteer hours are generally worked at events such as the Maker Fair or the County Fair, and people can do individual resource conservation projects as well to work their volunteer hours. So if you want to be part of the solution in resource conservation, I really encourage you to get involved.
Great, thanks. Oh, you know what? Okay, we had a few questions pop up based on, oh, we got a thank you. Thank you for the valuable information. Let's see if there's anything else. And Bob, just in case you were looking, Bob shared in the chat box the RecycleWorks.org website. It's just RecycleWorks.org. So if you have any other questions, you can direct them to the website. We thank you guys for attending today. We know that Sundays are a down day, and we're really glad that you spent the afternoon with us, and we hope that we shared some valuable information with you. So thanks so much. We're going to go ahead and sign off.